Hey everyone, I've just finished recording a 10-part mini-series on how to model earthwork and excavations in ArchiCAD. Now this is a topic a lot of users have asked about in the past, so I'm excited to be providing this one here on YouTube and hopefully helping some of you with your own earthwork models. We'll be covering topographies, elevation systems, excavations, shoring, backfills, solid element operations, and much more. So make sure to subscribe if you like this type of content, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, welcome. In this video, we will be going through and modeling in our topography for our site. Now, what we're looking at here, this is actually just the essentially our basement structure, foundations. You can see we have a lot of stepped foundations here and our whole entire basement level. And what we want to do is we want to get our topography modeled in, because this is really going to be kind of our starting point for working through and building up our excavation volume. So let's take a quick look at our civil site plan here, and we'll talk just a little bit about the elevations that we have, and then we will start jumping into actually modeling in the surface to represent our topography. Now, taking a look at this here, there's kind of a lot going on this particular drawing, but I think that's just the way that the city in the case wanted to see this. But I will point out that we have several different grades noted. The existing grades are the ones that are kind of in the lighter text here, versus the new grades or proposed grades, which are darker and have a box around them. We also have, you can see the outline of our new residences here. There's actually two of them on a single site. And this hatched line running through here, this is actually an existing building. So anytime that I'm approaching a site like this, I always kind of like to start with kind of working the boundaries. So by going through and tracing out essentially the extents of the topography I want to model. And then in a case like this, I would probably want to go through and actually get some points in here to represent kind of the boundaries of these structures that are already on site. And then from there, we'll kind of fill in the different grades in between. Now, if we had a drawing that was really set up with topography lines, then I would approach it much differently. And I'll show a quick example of how we would do topography lines. But in this case, it's really going to be more of kind of working with the information that we have and just making sure that we can get this as accurately as possible. So one thing I want to point out here is, let's actually pull up a section of this particular project. We'll just pull up one of the building sections here. And one thing I want to note is just our base elevations of our project. Now, we have our ground level here, which is actually set at 0. And we can see that our 0 point for reference here is actually a specific height above grade in this case, about it looks like about 5 feet or 4'9". And so this number right here, this 95.24, that is really our working point for our 0, or our project location elevation. So so we can see here we have this set up 95.24. This is actually defined in meters. And so when we actually go through, when we start building up our topography, we will actually want to be inputting these in meters, even though all of our dimensions and heights in most cases are actually in imperial units, feet and inches. That's one of the great things about ArchiCAD, is we can switch back and forth as needed, so that when we do these inputs, we can use whatever input is needed for the available information we have. So again, we've already set up that 95.24 equals our 0 point on this project. And based on that, we can then go through and start plugging in our elevations, which are also in meters here. Like these 93.64, this is all in meters. Everything here is in meters for our topography. So, okay, with that, let's go ahead and we can go into our project preferences, and we will temporarily switch over our working units from feet and fractional inches to meters. We'll just use 2 decimal points, and with that, we are almost ready to go. I'm going to switch over now to just my worksheet that has a linked reference to our model content plan. And in this case, I'm actually just going to be picking up a mesh here that's kind of set up for our site topo. So we're going to pick up our site existing. This is on a site existing layer. We just have it set up as site topo. We can go through and, if we wanted to set this up for calculating, quantities and pricing, we can do that, of course. But for this initial pass, we won't really be talking too much about that. But yeah, so we'll go through and we'll go start tracing out our boundary. And then we'll start adding some of these elevations. So I'm going to navigate down here to my construction models. I have a few different phases set up here. An existing site plan, which is going to be kind of the existing conditions. We'll have an excavation phase, a subgrade, which is essentially after the excavation, and then we'll go back through and do some backfill in another video here as we go through this process. So, okay, first step up is let's turn on our trace reference for our site plan. Okay, and so with a site like this, I could limit it just exactly to the area, but I think in this case I probably want to pick up a few, like some boundaries beyond our actual property line. And so I'm just going to start in this top right corner here, and we'll just do kind of the constraints or the outside bounding box of our particular project here. We can see we have some grades up here that we can work with. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of click through here. Off in the back over on this side, we have some grades over here. So let's just kind of do our extents. I'm actually we have one lot right here that contains one building, and then we have the mirror version of it on the southern part of the site. So let's just take this down, and we'll take it a little bit outside of our boundaries here. And I'm just kind of looking for some points here that we can match up to our elevations. So we're just going to not go too much detail here, but just enough that we can kind of get a nice boundary outside of our site. Okay, so there we go. We have our mesh. If we see what this looks like in 3D, we can see that we got this kind of funky texture going on. And actually, if I zoom in and we look at it, this is actually just a placeholder here for loading in Google Earth satellite imagery. Because a lot of the time when I'm doing these topos, I'll actually map some imagery to the surface. But in this case, let's just go ahead and we'll just override this with like an Earth type texture, and that is good enough for now. So, okay, one thing I want to point out that I didn't even talk about before we started getting into this is our elevation of our topography here. So right now this is all drawn as like a really, it's a single plane. We can see it's actually set to minus 0.05. Let's see if we can just zero this out. So right now we're set exactly, if we go to switch this to our sea level, we're at that 95.24. So as we zoom in here, we'll notice that most of our grades are actually lower than that, because the 95.24 is our finished surface of our ground level, which is about 5 feet above our finished grade. Remember that 5 feet kind of translates through into meters here as well. 95 to 93 is, close to 5 feet. And so, yeah, right now we just have a standard flat mesh that's been modeled over this entire site. So the next thing I think I want to do here is let's actually take a slab, And I'm just going to leave this as on a slab on grade layer. And we can set this as a demo layer, because what I want to do next is, because we have this building already kind of drawn in here, the existing building, I just want to go through and let's just kind of get some massing in here for those particular for what's existing here, because this actually has some good grades running around it. So we're just going to kind of map out a slab here to kind of represent this existing building. We can do the same thing over here with this shed. So we'll add one right there. And we also have this garage. So these don't have to be 100%, perfect. I'm not worried if we're off just a little bit there. This is really just more for getting us pretty close to our actual grades and bounding box, essentially. So, okay, one thing I'm going to do is let's just kind of turn off our trace. And with this topography selected, what we can do is we can actually just use our magic wand, and we'll click here, and we're just going to create some new points. And I always like doing this first so that we actually have these set up. And so now as we go through, we can start creating points that are going to be working from essentially the inside out. So if we take a look at this in 3D now, we can see exactly where those buildings occur. And then all we need to do is really just start going through, and we can turn back on our trace here a little bit, and we can go through and just start setting these elevations. So of course we need to change our input to our sea level so that we're matching our points here. And so now we are just going to set this at 93.81, and we're just going to work our way around our project here. So 93.63, I'm going to use that same value for all of these. 93.63, 93.62 on this side, 93.62. And yeah, we'll just go through and we're going to just kind of trace these out. So if we don't have a value that's exactly by our point, then we're just going to try to get really close. So 0.49 there, 93.43, 93.41, okay. And so as we're going through this, it's always good to bounce kind of back and forth to make sure that we're not missing any points here. So let's just continue on here. We'll finish out this existing house structure, and let's do our garage here as well. So 93.56, 93.47, 93.1. Again, we're using this value, not this one. So it looks like we'll be raising that grade a little bit. 93.53. Okay, so I think we've got pretty much all of these in. We haven't touched our perimeter just yet, but let's temporarily take a look here and just kind of see what's going on. So, all right, the things that I'm looking for here is I'm looking for any points that are kind of like very jaggedy, meaning that I totally missed the elevation point here. And so with one like this, what I'll probably do is I'm just going to take this and we'll just drop it down so that it's right next to an adjacent grade here. And okay, so we've got these points working. Now it's time to do our perimeter. So we'll start up here in this corner. So 9, and we need to change our input to altitude, 93.62. 90, change that again. Okay. Height to altitude. It's funny that that went to 0. So 93.59. 93.18. So I want to check this real quick to make sure that we didn't push this really far out here. So yeah, something happened there, and I think I had adjusted. I'm setting these based on that height. So why was my input off there? So let's try this again. So we are doing this to, oh, I had it set to altitude. We needed it set to sea level. That's why. So 93.62. It's always good to check before you go through and do too many of them. So 93.59. 93.18. 92.77. 92.97. So closest grade here that I'm seeing is right here. So we'll go 93.38. 93.6. 93.77. Okay, so let's check it now. All right, we are starting to get much closer here. So we can see that we kind of drop off a little bit on this corner, but that's okay. That's exactly the grades that they had specified. And okay, so we are moving right along here. So now that we've done kind of our existing grades around our buildings, it's now time that we can go through and actually start populating some of these more intermediate grades. So with this, I'm just going to kind of click right in the center here. We'll just create a single point, and we're just going to start doing some spot elevations. So we can see that this is already pretty close to where it's intended to be. And so let's just kind of go through and plop a few elevations in here. And we are going to quickly kind of just dial this in so that we have really accurate grades. So 93.82. 93.70. 70. 66. We can give some points along the perimeter as well just by adding a point here and then adjusting. So 93.64. Whenever you're doing these inputs, by the way, you really want to make sure that you're always on your mesh tool. Otherwise, it doesn't necessarily want to cooperate as easily. So if you ever have like an issue creating the points, like if I hit escape one more time, we'll get off that tool and I can still select this, but going in, like right now, I can't add that point as I was before, where you really need to make sure that you're on your mesh tool, and then you can start drawing on top and adding these points. So if you ever find that you are struggling to add the points, then double check and make sure that you have your mesh tool selected. So, okay, so we are working through this here. Oop, that one's perfectly on already. Let's get one right on this perimeter right here. So 6.4. So yeah, we're really close now. Let's get a few over on this side. 0.73. So that one's going to bring us up a little bit. Let's do 0.76. So after we go through and finish this, we'll show the other method of how to do this if you had topography lines to work with, which obviously we don't in this particular case, but that's another method that often can really help with these inputs and speed things up if you have that information to work with. So let's see, 0.62. Yeah, you can see that we are only adjusting these just, a fraction at this point. 93.17. Yeah. That's 0.05 meters, so not much at all. 93.29 right here. Yeah. Okay, we are almost there. 93.11. And we really don't need to do all of these over here. We can always go back in and add more later. We just really want to make sure that we have enough around our building and that we really just have things as close as possible. So we'll just do just a few more here. Oops, what did I do there? Oh, we added it, but right now there are no changes. So that's hence why we don't see any of these contour lines, but as soon as we add it, we'll get one. So 93.71, let's get one in here. Yeah, we are very, very close at this rate. I'm going to leave off this 94.8 because I think that grade is actually from the existing concrete porch there. And okay, so now we have these in. We'll do one more right here, 93.58. Okay, there we go. Let's check it out. So there's our topography. It's a pretty flat site. There is some variation here, but we got this in. And so what's awesome now is if we start taking a look at some of our sections here, like let's just take a look at section A, which is running through our building. You can actually see that we already have turned on as a trace reference our architectural section here. And so if we start in the front, we can actually see that the grades are a bit different than what is being shown in the section. So maybe these grades here are intended to be the new proposed grade versus the existing. Looks like this may have been the existing grade, so we are right on in that case. On the back side here, we can see that we are pretty much right on exactly where we want to be to transition from the stairs going between the basement and the main level. So yeah, we can see the sloping on the site. We can pull up a few other sections here. Let's pull up section C. Once again, we have our trace already kind of turned on just as a reference plane here. We can actually see in this case where that demo slab is, which we probably want to adjust down. We'll actually go through and make some adjustments using these slabs later on, but for the moment, let's just pull this down and we will kind of set this right in this area as the existing grade there, or the existing elevated grade. All these are elevated main floors, so we'll go through and we'll do some massing with this later on, which will be something that we'll use to just kind of really dial in our excavation volume to incorporate the existing basement on the site. So so that will be fun. I think I copied that instead of just dragging it. So yeah, we can see here our different elevation changes, but we are pretty close in line with what was anticipated there. Let's cut through the other direction. Section D. So here we can see that we are slightly off. You can actually see that in this section here, they have some anticipated cut lines, which are pretty, that's a pretty steep cut line. Often you won't be able to do more than like a 1-to-1 depending on the soil conditions. So this might need some sort of retaining structure, some shoring, which we will talk about later on in this video sequence here. On this side over here, we actually have the existing property to work with, so we can set this back as far as we want. And so, okay, let's just cut one more here. There we can see our grades. We're pretty close in that case. And all right, so I think that probably takes us to the end here of getting our initial topography modeled in. So we're off to a good start. In the next video here, I actually want to do a really quick one on adding in some property lines that we can actually see in our section here. So next video, we'll do a quick little trick on how to use morphs to create some property lines that show up in 3D, 2D, and in section. So we'll do a short one there, and then we will start getting into actually some of the excavation massing after that. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any questions on this, leave it in the comment section, and we will catch you on the next video here where we'll dive into the property lines.